They came from a void like a sickness, with no warning. One moment, the sky was ours, cluttered with satellites and streaks of human ambition. The next, it split open. 100 alien dreadnoughts descended like gods of war, their hulls blotting out the stars. They called themselves the Vyrrhax Dominion. We called them monsters. I was in Manhattan when the first pulse hit. Not a bomb, no. Those would have been merciful. It was a gravity wave, a localized distortion that turned entire city blocks into slag and bone. Steel skyscrapers collapsed like paper underfoot. My brother Liam was on the 40th floor of the Midtown Medical Tower. I saw it buckle through the cafe window, tilt like it was bowing to death, and then vanish in a blossom of debris. We didn't know it was a war at first. We thought it was annihilation. I barely escaped, covered in blood that wasn't mine, eyes seared by ash and grief. My name is Elena Vostrikov, and I was a physicist once, a scientist, a dreamer. But the day they burned our cities, I became something else, something humanity would need to become if we ever hoped to survive, because Earth was dying. The Vyrrhax didn't come for peace. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to cleanse. We later learned, through garbled intercepts and tortured prisoners, that we were labeled pre-extinction primitives, a species too erratic to assimilate, too aggressive to leave unchecked. So they cleansed. By the end of the second week, every major urban center had been hit. Paris, Shanghai, Nairobi, Sao Paulo gone. The oceans boiled where their orbital lances struck. Our defenses, patchwork as they were, crumbled in hours. They neutralized nukes before we could arm them, shot down our last space station, blocked satellite communications, turned the world blind. But they made one mistake. They left survivors. Beneath the Appalachian Mountains, there was a place no map marked, a former Cold War relic codenamed Deep Rot. The last remnants of Earth's fragmented governments and rogue military cells converged there, not out of hope, out of instinct, like rats in a cave after a firestorm. That's where I found them, or where they found me. I'd hiked through 200 miles of scorched earth, guided only by intercepted signals and a notebook full of old satellite charts. Along the way, I watched the sky pulse with violet flame. I buried strangers. I learned to fight. Inside Deep Rot, everything was different. People didn't weep. They sharpened knives. I met Commander Harrow there, a grizzled veteran of Europa skirmishes and one of the last surviving tacticians Earth had. His eyes held the weight of a dead planet, but his voice had steel in it. "You're Vostrikov?" he asked, arms crossed as I limped into their command center, half delirious. "The quantum engineer?" "I was," I replied. "Now I'm a witness." He nodded slowly, like he understood more than I said. "Then you've seen enough to want payback." Payback. It wasn't justice. It wasn't even vengeance. What we wanted was survival. What we needed was ascension. That was the beginning of Project Starfall. You see, the Vyrrhax burned our cities, but we were going to burn their stars. We had fragments of their tech, salvaged from downed scout ships and suicide drones. From it, we reverse-engineered bits of their FTL systems. Crude, incomplete, but enough to understand their fuel. Exotic matter stabilized in singularity chambers. Weapons grade. Star Killer class. The kind of fuel that could crack a sun in half if destabilized. And we planned to do just that. But we needed ships. We needed scientists, soldiers, saboteurs. I became all three. Every survivor brought a skill. Some could pilot. Others could shoot. I could calculate interstellar trajectories with no beacon. Together, we built what the Vyrrhax never expected. A retaliatory fleet, cobbled from human scrap and alien fury. They underestimated us. They always had. And when the first human strike team jumped into the Illyrian system, the heart of the Vyrrhax star forges, they didn't expect the payload we carried. We weren't here to conquer. We were here to set suns on fire. We called it the leap. Our first faster-than-light jump. Our first reach into the abyss beyond Earth. We didn't test it. We couldn't afford to. Either the FTL drive worked, or we die in a burst of quantum fragmentation. Some said that was mercy. The ship I rode on, Vengeance Arc, was barely more than a death trap in disguise. Its frame was welded from old Earth military cruisers and alien scrap, armored with plating ripped from Vyrrhax drones. It was ugly. It rattled. It screamed when we jumped. But it flew. We exited hyperspace over Illyrian, the cradle of Vyrrhax star forges. I remember my breath catching in my throat, not because of the beauty. There was none, just cold geometry, artificial rings wrapped around 3 burning suns, cities in orbit, monoliths crawling with alien life. This was where their weapons were born. This was where the order to burn Earth had come from. And we were here to return the favor. Our mission was simple: deliver the device, get out if we could. But Vengeance Arc was never coming home. We knew that. We were ghosts, every last one of us. There were 24 of us aboard. Soldiers, engineers, exobiologists, cyberneticists, survivors. No uniforms, just patchwork armor and cold fire in our eyes. No ranks, no oaths. Only the vow we'd made in deep rot. If we fall forward. I led the sabotage team, not because I outranked anyone, but because I built the bomb, a singularity cascade, self-generating entropy loop inside an exotic matter core. Once armed, it would feed on stellar plasma, multiply mass conversion exponentially, and rip the sun apart atom by atom. It wouldn't just detonate. It would devour. It was an atrocity, the kind that would have made me sick before the war. Now I called it justice. We dropped in low beneath their orbital tracking systems. Vyrrhax tech still didn't fully account for chaotic, erratic maneuvers. That was our edge. Unpredictability. Humans were messy, unstable. But that instability was what let us survive when logic said we shouldn't. We slid through a blind zone between Illyrian's second and third sun, masked by solar flare interference. The Vyrrhax didn't see us coming. Not yet. Once we were in range of the primary fusion relay, we launched our infiltration pods. It was time to walk into the lion's den. The surface of Relay Theta was all obsidian black alloy and searing heat. Vyrrhax tech was alive in a way ours wasn't. Pulsing with neural synapse filaments, humming with electro thought. The air shimmered with nanomist that tried to penetrate our suits. They didn't expect us to be there, but the station was still guarded. We met resistance in the core conduit. 2 Vyrrhax warriors, 8 feet tall, for arms each, encased in gleaming armor that flexed like muscle. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. Tomas, one of our exosuit scouts, took a plasma blade through the chest. His last breath was a curse. Don't stop. Go. We didn't. We fought like cornered animals. We had to. Our weapons were old. Their armor was new. But rage? Rage was universal. We overwhelmed them in minutes. I reached the heart of the fusion tap, a sphere of spinning stellar plasma encased in magnetic lattices a kilometer wide. One wrong move, and we'd be vaporized. One right move, and a star would die. I placed a cascade in the reactor housing. I wired it myself. I knew every pulse, every failsafe, every override. And when my fingers hovered over the activation sequence, something strange happened. I hesitated, because I remembered Liam, my brother, his laugh, his violin, the way he used to hum symphonies when he thought no one was listening. He was dead, but here I was, about to burn a sun that lit 100 alien worlds. Did they have brothers? Did they have violins? I gritted my teeth. Then I pressed the final key. Cascade armed. Stellar integrity countdown initiated. 6 hours to collapse. We didn't have 6 hours. We barely had 20 minutes. We raced back to the surface. Back to our pods. Half our team was gone. Some left behind, some dead. One dragged screaming into a vent by something that shouldn't have been alive. We launched. Vengeance Arc fired every last thruster to sling us out of the system's gravity well. Behind us, alarms lit up Illyrian. Vyrrhax ships swarmed like hornets. They knew. Too late. The third sun began to wobble. When we emerged from FDL near the edge of the Persis arm, we watched through the rear sensors. The Illyrian star flared blue, then white, then it collapsed. Not in silence, but in a scream across every frequency. Not just energy, data, memory, language. It was as if the star itself was alive and crying as it died. Then came the shock wave. We cheered. We wept. Some vomited. Because we'd done it. We burned one of their stars. And the galaxy would never be the same again. You don't burn a star without consequences. We knew that, but we didn't understand it. Not until the retaliation came. 3 days after the Illyrian system went dark, every human settlement still standing. On Earth, Luna, Mars, the outer stations went silent. Not destroyed. Just muted, as if every frequency, every signal, every whisper was swallowed by something deeper than vacuum. We called it the silence. At first, we thought it was jamming, electronic warfare, maybe even an EMP net stretched across local space. But then the screaming started. We picked up the first transmission while drifting near the ruins of Saturn's rings, what used to be a fuel depot called Kepler Relay. Static filled our bridge, followed by a sound like metal being torn apart, then a voice, human but wrong. We see you, we burn with you, we are the ash between your thoughts. Then it cut out. The crew stared at each other. No one spoke. Even Harrow, patched in from the Deep Rock command net, went quiet. His voice, when it came, was low, shaken. That wasn't a broadcast, he said. That was a return signal. They're responding to something inside us. We didn't understand it then. Not fully. But what we'd unleashed at Illyrian hadn't just destroyed a sun. It had shattered something beyond physics. Something that was never meant to be touched. The Vyrrhax weren't just fighting for territory. They were containment wardens. And we had broken the lock. Our next mission was a rescue op, or what passed for one in a dying galaxy. A signal flare had been triggered from the ruins of Vega Prime, an old terraforming colony abandoned during the early weeks of the invasion. It wasn't automated. It carried an encryption tag belonging to Dr. Kyra Mbeki, an AI theoretician presumed dead. Mbeki was one of the first to suggest that Vyrrhax weapon systems were partially sentient, not just responding to commands, but anticipating, learning, adapting. If she was alive, we had to get her. The ride to Vega was tense. Our FTL systems were still unstable, and the stress of fleeing Illyrian had damaged the flux coils. We made the jump anyway. We always did. Vega Prime looked like a ghost planet. Its atmosphere was intact, but thin and discolored. The colony domes were shattered, scorched from orbit, yet something moved in the dust, machines, perhaps, or scavengers. We didn't land. We crashed. An orbital mine clipped our port stabilizer. The arc went down like a comet. Only 9 of us crawled from the wreckage. We found Mbeki deep beneath the shattered biodomes, in an old command bunker powered by geothermal vents. She was thinner than I remembered, half-starved, hair tangled, eyes fever-bright. But she was alive, and she wasn't alone. She had built something. Strung across the walls of the bunker were fragments of Vyrrhax tech, human processors, and something older, a neural lattice that pulsed like a heartbeat. At the center, suspended in a containment field, was a shard of something we had no name for, crystalline, black as void, whispering in frequencies no ear could hear. I call it the singularity seed, she said, voice shaking with exhaustion. It didn't die when the star collapsed. It moved, into us, into the code, into the data. She looked at me, and in her gaze I saw something terrible. It's alive, Elena. We thought we were burning stars. We weren't. We were releasing something, and now it was following us. That night, we camped in the remains of the dome. No fire, no signals, just cold silence. One of our sentries vanished, just gone, no trace. Another began humming a tune none of us recognized, then bit off his own tongue before we could stop him. Whatever the seed was, it wasn't physical. It moved through thought, through signal, through memory, and it was learning. We couldn't risk taking the seed back to Earth. Not yet, but neither could we leave it. We made a choice. Becky would stay. She would keep the seed in deep cryolock, hidden from both human and Vyrrhax eyes. I'm not afraid, she told me. This thing is ancient, maybe even pre-galactic. But if we can study it, maybe we'll understand what the Vyrrhax were trying to contain. Maybe we'll learn why they burned our world before we could touch the stars. I hugged her. It felt like goodbye. As we left Vega, I looked back to the viewport, the shattered colony, the broken domes, the dust dancing across a dead world. And I wondered, had we won a victory at Illyrian? Or had we just lit the match on something worse? They burned our cities. We burned their stars. But the fire, it was still spreading. We thought Earth was gone. After Illyrian and Vega, we'd stopped expecting news. Only silence. The kind of silence that howls if you stare into it long enough. But Earth hadn't fallen. It had fractured. The transmission came through a deep space relay we'd long written off, an old military buoy near Neptune's shadow, blinking a code only a handful of us remembered. It was raw, encrypted in a pre-collapse protocol known only to Deep Rot's founders. The voice was unmistakable. Commander Harrow. This is Fortress Soul. Earth Command is active. Repeat, Earth Command has survived. But we are no longer unified. That last word struck harder than the rest. No longer unified. When we arrived at Earth's edge, we saw the truth with our own eyes. Above the planet's scarred surface, two fleets hovered. Both human, both armed to the teeth, weapons trained on each other. The first bore Deep Rot's insignia, black wings over a red spiral. The other was marked by a sigil we hadn't seen since before the fall, a stylized phoenix over shattered glass. The Ascendancy. They weren't just survivors. They were separatists. Harrow briefed us from orbit. After silence began, Deep Rot went dark for 13 days. When it emerged, half its senior command was dead, imploded by a mimetic virus that spread through encrypted dreams. Survivors barely contained it. During the chaos, a faction split off. Scientists, fleet captains, remnants of corporate enclaves. They believed the war had changed us forever, that humanity had evolved into something new, something above peace, above diplomacy. The Ascendancy believed we should finish what we started, not just burn Vyrrhax stars, but claim them, turn the Vyrrhax's empire into our own, and they had the firepower to try. We met their leader face to face, Admiral Kalen Vyrrhax, once a weapons engineer on Mars, now reborn as a warlord in gold-trimmed armor and a voice like sharpened ice. He welcomed us aboard his flagship, the Aegis Crown, with all the charm of a monarch greeting foreign dignitaries. "You burned a star," he said, watching me closely. "So did we." "Two, actually. Do you feel it yet? The shift? The weight of inevitability?" I told him we came to end the war, not start another one. His smile was cruel. The war is already over. This is succession. Deep Rot and the Ascendancy had reached a standoff. Earth's orbit was mined with proximity nukes, tripwire drones, and fusion torpedoes primed to detonate if either side made a move. One more escalation, and humanity would wipe itself out before the Vyrrhax even struck back. And the Vyrrhax were coming. We intercepted a signal just hours after docking. A burst of data from a galactic rim, faint but unmistakable. A new Vyrrhax superfleet, 200 ships, planet killers. Direction? So, ETA, for days. We didn't have time to fracture. We had to unify, or die. That night, I stood at the edge of the Aegis Crown's viewport, staring down at Earth. The scars were visible from orbit, massive impact zones. Entire continents were formed by heat and fire. The sky was a permanent haze, like the planet couldn't stop bleeding. And yet, light still flickered. Cities underground, shielded towers. Survivors. Earth had endured, just like us. I called a meeting. Harrow, Vyrrhax, representatives from both factions. I didn't ask permission. I demanded attendance. "You want to win this war?" I told them. "Then you stop playing Emperor and Bunker King. Because the Vyrrhax are coming. And this time they're not sending scouts. They're sending extinction." Vyrrhax sneered. "We're prepared." "No," I said. "You're playing God with broken toys." I dropped Mbecky's data core on the table, the one containing the seeds analysis, the waveforms, the recorded whispers. The Vyrrhax weren't just fighting us. They were holding something back. When we destroyed Illyrian, we released it. It's inside our tech now, inside our minds. Harrow paled. He'd seen it firsthand. Vyrrhax's defiance wavered. I don't care what banners you fly, I said, but if we don't work together, there won't be anything left to fight over. Not Earth, not Sol, not the stars. Silence. Then Harrow extended his hand. Vyrrhax stared. Then, slowly, took it. We called it the Fracture Pact. Not a peace. An armistice. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to unify fleets, reroute power grids, align defense satellites. We integrated Deep Rot's AI fire control with ascendancy supercarriers. We trained soldiers side by side. And we built something new. A ship, a spear, a weapon that carried the seed, not to unleash, but to lock away. Project Eclipticon. If the Vyrrhax came, we'd meet them with fire. But this time, we wouldn't just burn their stars. We'd erase their sky. War has a rhythm. You hear it in the way the decks vibrate beneath your boots before battle, in the breathless silence before command is given, in the low hum of systems charging, energy building like a heartbeat before it bursts. But this time, the rhythm was different, because this time, we weren't just fighting for survival. We were fighting for everything. The Vyrrhax came as predicted. On the third day, at 0100 Sol time, they didn't decloak. They didn't warn. They simply appeared. 200 ships, some kilometers long, folding out of space-time like blades drawn from cosmic sheets. Their hulls were darker than space, reflecting no light, jagged, fractal things that hurt to look at. Even our scanners glitched just trying to render them. And then came the signal. Organic infestation detected. Containment protocol failed. Commencing absolute nullification. That was their name for it. Absolute nullification. Erasing us as if we'd never existed. The orbital grid fired first, Earth's last line of defense. Over 400 linked fusion lances, synchronized by Deep Rot's resurrected AI core. Ascendancy warships followed next, launching kinetic harpoons the size of buildings. Each one tipped with shard of the seed, designed to disrupt Vyrrhax thought nets. And we struck hard. 7 Vyrrhax ships were torn apart in the first salvo. One of their dreadnoughts shattered into ribbons of molten metal. But they didn't slow, didn't retreat. They adapted. Vyrrhax fighters swarmed the defense satellites, tearing them apart like insects chewing bone. Their capital ships fired beams at warp gravity itself, twisting ships into lethal spirals. Ascendancy dreadnoughts burst like overripe fruit, their fusion cores cracking under pressure. And then they landed. Pods dropped from orbit like falling stars, dozens of them, burning through atmosphere, slamming into Earth's crust, not to destroy, to infect. On the ground, the seed awoke. That's what we feared most, not the ships, not the weapons, but the idea that the thing we'd unleashed at Illyrian, the thing now dormant inside our systems, would respond to them, like a child recognizing its parent, or a key turning in a lock. I led the assault team down in the Revenant, one of the hybrid jump cruisers born from a Fracture Pact. Our target, a crashed Vyrrhax command node near what used to be the Mojave Desert, now a radioactive plain of dust and broken bones. We fought through horrors I still don't have words for. Creatures stitched from biomass and circuitry, drones that screamed in human voices, and something that looked like my brother, Liam, his face, his smile, but wrong. Hollow, programmed from memory data. The Vyrrhax had scavenged from Earth's old neural nets. I put a rail round through its skull before it could speak again. I didn't cry. Inside the command node, we found a central relay, a pulsating sphere of Vyrrhax alloy, anchored in magnetic fields and wrapped in tendrils of neural light. We planted the seed core directly into it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything did. The seed activated, not as a bomb, but as a signal jammed into the Vyrrhax hive mind. A virus, a paradox, a thought they couldn't process. You can lose. Across the sky, their ships began to stutter. Movement slowed. Patterns broke. Their formations drifted like puppets with cut strings. And then, one by one, they started imploding. Not exploding. Imploding. Vanishing into themselves. As if the universe had revoked their existence. But victory always comes with a cost. The seed didn't stop with them. It began to creep into our systems. Into the Revenant's AI. Into the neural mesh in our suits. One of my team dropped his knees, whispering in a tongue that wasn't his. Another screamed until his throat ruptured. The seed was learning us now. I made the call. I activated the Eclipticon protocol. Far above us, the Eclipticon, our final failsafe, orbited in silence. A colossal weapon station, built from a Vyrrhax core and Earth's last fusion generator. At my command, it launched a singularity spike into the upper thermosphere. A controlled implosion. A temporary fracture in local space-time. A cage. One designed to lock the seed away for good. It worked. Mostly. The seed went silent. The Vyrrhax fleet collapsed in retreat or death. And Earth breathed again. But some of the seed's code, its ideas, had already spread. And ideas don't die. I watched the sky for hours after the battle ended. Ash rained down, thick and gray, over a planet that had bled and burned and somehow endured. Fire still burned in the distance, but above them, stars pierced the black. Clear, silent, hours. But I knew better. This wasn't the end. Just a pause. Because we had survived the Vyrrhax. But we had awakened something far older, and it was still watching, waiting. I used to think silence was peace. But after the war, the silence felt wrong. Not like the calm after battle, more like the inhale before scream. A week had passed since the battle for Sol. The Vyrrhax fleet had either fled, imploded, or simply ceased to exist. The skies above Earth were clear, save for drifting wreckage and the faint silhouette of the Eclipticon, now dark and dormant. The fractured pact held, for now. Deep Rot and the Ascendancy formed a temporary command council, a fragile unity hammered from shared trauma and dwindling numbers. But beneath the celebration, beneath the talk of rebuilding, we all felt it. The presence. The thing that watched. It started small. A systems engineer on Lunar Station. 3 reported hearing whispers in his EVA suit. Nothing on comms. Nothing in logs. Then came the dreams. Identical ones. Across species. Language. Even consciousness architecture. Human and AI alike. Dreams of black suns. Of empty thrones. Of voices whispering. We see the ones who burn. That was the phrase. Over and over again. We see the ones who burn. I returned to Vega Prime. Alone. I needed answers. And Becky was the only one who might have them. The seed was still there, locked in cryostasis, sealed behind a dozen safeguards that shouldn't have been breakable. But they were. She met me outside the vault, pale, thinner than before. Her eyes didn't blink enough. "It's not a weapon," she said quietly. "Not really." "Then what is it?" I asked. Her hand trembled as she gestured to the reinforced glass behind her. Inside, the seed shimmered faintly in its container, like obsidian pulsing with memory. "It's a witness." That word hit harder than a plasma bolt. A witness, not of us, of the universe, of everything before us, everything above us, entities that watch civilizations rise and fall like sparks in a dark sea, beings not bound by time or matter, ideas so vast they needed no form. The Vyrrhax hadn't tried to conquer us. They were trying to keep us from making contact. And we had not only made contact, we had fed it, with war, with fear, with a fire of burning stars. Becky looked at me, and I saw the terror behind her exhaustion. Elena, we didn't win. We passed the threshold, and it saw us. Back on Earth, the signs multiplied. AI constructs began developing recursive self-awareness loops, patterns folding in on themselves, repeating abstract symbols in code. Entire data clusters vanished into quantum noise. A child in New Berlin drew a perfect replica of the seed lattice, though she had never seen it. The moon turned red for 4 days, no atmospheric explanation. Instruments said nothing had changed. But we knew. The thing that watched was growing curious. We convened a council, Harrow, Vyrrhax, Becky, and the surviving fleet minds. "I want to kill it," Vyrrhax said bluntly. We fired the Eclipticon again. This time at the seed's origin point. Glass everything. Leave nothing. Harrow disagreed. "You can't kill an idea with brute force. You make martyrs. You make echoes." Becky looked at me. It didn't come for conquest. It came for invitation. The Vyrrhax refused it. We embraced it. That's why it chose us. That's when I realized the truth. The seed wasn't just a witness. It was a mirror. It showed civilizations the shape of their soul. And ours was made of fire. I stood in the Hall of Echoes, an ancient Vyrrhax archive ship we salvaged during the retreat. Its walls still whispered in dream logic, vibrating with untranslatable data. In the center was a Vyrrhax corpse preserved in stasis. Its final log burned into its neural mesh. We translated it. The message was short. We failed to contain the firewalkers. We envy your silence. That's what they called us. Firewalkers. The ones who burned and kept walking. I returned to Vega with one last order. Open the vault. I told Becky. She hesitated. You want to destroy it? No, I said. I want to speak to it. She stared, her expression unreadable. Why? I looked past her at the pulsing black shard, because it already speaks through us. That night, I dreamed for the first time in weeks. A black sun, a sky torn like paper, 1,000 human faces staring up from the void, their eyes filled with starlight. And in that silence, I heard the whisper again, not in fear, not in threat, but in recognition. We see the ones who burn. And this time, I whispered back, then watch us rise. I stood alone on the observation deck of the Vigilant Dawn, Earth's first interstellar vessel born not from desperation, but from defiance. Beyond the reinforced glass, the Eclipticon hovered above Earth's atmosphere like a scar in the sky, half-lit, still humming with residual energy. Below us, Earth healed, slowly. Above us, the unknown waited. And somewhere in the fabric of space-time, it watched. It had been 6 months since the Vyrrhax fell. 6 months since the seed was locked away in its vault beneath Vega Prime, surrounded by safeguards both technological and psychological. 6 months since the last whisper had reached us in dreams. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like the edge of something new, a threshold. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were remembered. The Council fractured again, as we knew it would. Vyrrhax faction wanted expansion, colonization of former Vyrrhax worlds, reverse engineering the seed, pushing human dominance across the stars. They feared us, he said. Let them fear more. Harrow took the opposite path. He argued for isolation, for fortifying Earth and closing the doors we'd broken open. We've awakened something, he said. Let's not invite it in. But for the first time, I didn't belong to either camp. I belonged to something else. It started with the echoes. Not dreams, this time. Memories. Not mine. I saw flashes of a Vyrrhax child, laughing under a twin-sun sky. I felt the sorrow of a dying artificial moon, its consciousness fading as its orbit collapsed. I heard civilization screaming as the seed judged them, not with malice, but with a strange cosmic curiosity. And then, one night, I heard my own voice played back to me from the stars. Then watch us rise. It had answered. Becky called me back to Vega. The seed had changed. Not escaped. Not expanded. Just changed. Its structure had reconfigured itself into a fractal pattern we didn't recognize until we mirrored it against humanity's neural architecture. It was learning us, not consuming, not controlling, becoming compatible. And then the message came. It wasn't in words. Not really. Just a cascade of imagery, sound, sensation. A translation of thought, alien thought, compressed into a pulse of light. We decoded what we could. The burned ones walk. The fire is past. The threshold is open. Choose. That was the last line. Choose. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. We brought the council back together, one last time. 3 options were laid before US. Destroy the seed. Use the Eclipticon to fracture space-time one final time, erasing the seed and all it touched. Contain it. Lock it away indefinitely. Keep humanity bound to known space, never again touching what lies beyond. Join it. No one knew what that meant. Integration? Transcendence? Death? But I knew what we were. We were the ones who burn, not because we sought destruction, But because we endured fire and emerged changed, the vote was cast. And the answer was yes. The ascension chamber was built in low orbit, a fusion of Vyrrhax biocircuitry, Earth steel, and the seed's fractal core. I stepped into it wearing no armor, no weapons, just a suit of woven neural threads, linking my mind directly to the seed. If humanity was to change, I would be its vanguard, not a martyr, a messenger. What I saw on the other side, I cannot fully explain. A sea of stars made a memory, a choir of thought, civilizations long dead, remembered by the seed, ideas that never took form until they touched a mind that could feel them, shapes that existed only in shared grief, joy, wonder. The seed was not a god. It was not an enemy. It was a mirror, and through it, I saw what we could become. When I returned, I wasn't quite the same. Part of me still stood on Earth's soil, but another part looked beyond. I didn't bring back a weapon. I brought back a path. The war was over. The stars we burned had become our shadows. But the galaxy, no, the universe, was vast, and somewhere others were watching, waiting, whispering, "We see the ones who burn." And now they would see us ascend.